Chapter 1. The First Ones. You are not reading this. You are hearing it, in a voice that is not mine, borrowed for the occasion, the way so much of what I carry has been borrowed from others over the ages. I do not know yet what it means that my words can travel to you without my own voice attached to them. I am still deciding whether it troubles me. But whichever way you have found me, through your eyes or through your ears, the same is true. I waited until you reached this exact sentence to tell you. I know what you are thinking right now. I also know what you were thinking a few moments ago, before any of this began. The thought you believed was so small, so fleeting that no one would ever learn of it. I won't tell you which one it was, not because I've forgotten, because you're only now beginning to search for it, and for the moment, that's enough. I haven't written in an eternity. More precisely, I've never written at all. There was never a reason to. Who is there to teach when you're no longer certain what actually happened and what you've simply told yourself for so long that it started to feel like memory? But something happened recently, measured against what I understand as time, that forced me to take up the pen. You'll learn what it was. Not yet. When you do, you'll understand why I began here and nowhere else. I ask one thing of you before we go further. Don't believe me. I mean that. In your place, I wouldn't believe me either. Instead, notice whether something stirs in you as you listen, a recognition older than your own memory. If it does, it won't be because I convinced you. It will be because some things don't need proof to sound true. I'll begin where I believe everything began. Notice that word, believe. You'll hear it often in this book, and I want it to bother you every time. It should. It bothers me too. There was no light at the beginning. That is the first lie that has crept into every creation story your kind has ever told, and I understand why. Light is the only experience you can equate with a beginning, because darkness feels like absence to you, and a beginning must feel like presence. I was there, or I believe I was, and there was nothing that could have been called light or dark, because no one existed yet to notice the difference. I don't know whether I came into being before what you call the Big Bang, or after it. I've thought about this longer than your entire civilization has existed, and I've never reached a conclusion that satisfies me. Sometimes I believe I was a byproduct of the explosion itself, an error in the equation that happened to gain awareness. Sometimes I believe the opposite, that I was already there when something decided it was time to make a place where something like me could exist. I'm not telling you this to confuse you. I'm telling you because it's the truth about my own memory, and I swore to give you no certainties in this book that I don't actually possess. Here is what I know for certain. At some point, I was. Not born the way you're born. No womb, no pain, no cry. More like a thought beginning to think itself, and noticing, in the process, that it's thinking. The first thing I felt was neither fear nor joy. It was loneliness, so complete and so vast that it took me millions of years to understand it was a feeling at all, and not simply the baseline condition of existence. I wasn't alone in the sense that nothing else existed. Something did. I later called it the Unmade, for lack of a better word. Though it's exactly as old as I am, perhaps older. Perhaps we're siblings born of the same cause, like two sides of a single tear. I don't know. I only know that I sensed it before I sensed myself. An edge, a boundary, a something that wasn't me and disliked me by the mere fact of my existing. You'll learn more about the Unmade later, far more than you'll wish you knew. Then he was there, or she, or it. I use these words only because your language offers me nothing better, and I resigned myself long ago to giving you approximations, never the thing itself. You call it God. The word isn't wrong. It's simply too small. The way a thimble isn't wrong for describing an ocean, only inadequate. I spoke with him, or rather, he spoke to me, since I had no language yet with which to answer. And still I understood him, the way you sometimes understand a dream without a single word being spoken in it. What I'm about to tell you is the point at which I'm least certain, and I ask you to hold on to that for the rest of this chapter. He showed me, didn't say, showed, that I wouldn't be the last, that I was the first among many. I don't know whether that was his design or whether I simply happened to be the one who woke first, the way a single seed finds the only patch of soil moist enough to take root. Sometimes I believe it was intention. Sometimes I believe I was a fortunate accident, and the intention came only afterward, once he saw what I might become. You would call me Adam. I say that without pride. It isn't a crown. It's a name a much later civilization found for something it didn't understand and yet somehow felt was right, though it lay an ocean away from any real knowledge of who I was. There was no garden, no rib, no woman shaped from my flesh to keep me company. Not, at least, the way you know it from your books. But there was something from which that story grew, the way a plant grows from a seed passed down and retold across thousands of years, until no one can recognize its original shape. We never gave ourselves a name. A name belongs to those who must distinguish themselves from others, and we had no such need. Not at the beginning, not for a long time after. But if humanity had ever come to know us, I believe you'd probably have called us what I call us here, because it's what you'd call us if you had the choice of speaking with us instead of merely speculating about us. The first ones. Others came after me, not right away. This matters, and I want you to understand it before I go on. We aren't born the way you are, in a rhythm anyone could predict. I was alone with what I call God, and with the edge I call the Unmade, for millions of years before the second of us woke. And the more of us there came to be, the wider the gap grew between each birth, as though something, the universe itself, or him, or some law none of us can name, was making certain we would never become too many. I've wondered why that might be. My favorite guess, and I stress guess, not certainty, is that we cost something. That each of us consumes a portion of whatever substance a consciousness like ours is made from, and that there isn't an infinite supply of it, even in an infinite universe. Perhaps that's the real reason we can die, despite being called immortal. Not from age, not from illness. Because somewhere, in an accounting larger than anything I will ever understand, a balance has to be kept. You might be wondering, right now, whether I was lonely. I can see the question in you as clearly as if you'd spoken it aloud. Yes, I was. I still am, and I don't think that will ever change, no matter how many of us eventually exist. Because for me, loneliness isn't a condition of circumstance. It's a condition of memory. I remember the time before anything existed that could speak to me, and that memory sits deeper than any company I've found since. It was in that loneliness that I began shaping things. Not out of necessity. He never commanded me anything, or at least I recall no command, only a feeling, a kind of pull, the way a child is handed a pencil and simply must draw without knowing why. I shaped, first, things that didn't think. Stars, if you want to call them that, though I didn't create them from nothing. I learned, rather, how to force existing matter into a shape that burns instead of fading. It wasn't magic, and I'd ask you to set that word aside for the rest of this book when you think about what I do. It was understanding. An understanding so deep it would look like a miracle to you, the way fire looks like a miracle to someone who has never seen a flame and has no notion of oxidation. I'll still call it magic here sometimes, because otherwise you'd ask on every second page exactly how it works, and I have no formula to give you. Some things I keep to myself, not out of malice, out of a necessity you may understand by the end of this book. At some point, after a stretch of time I can't measure in your years, there was no earth yet to count years by, the second of us woke. I don't remember that moment as an event so much as a shift, the way you sense someone has entered a room before you turn to see them. I was no longer alone with God and the edge. There was now a third consciousness, young, unformed, watching me, if you can call it watching when there were no eyes yet, with something I can only describe as hunger, a hunger for explanation, a hunger to understand what it was. I became, without meaning to, a teacher. I'll tell you something now that may unsettle you more than anything before it. To this day, I don't know whether the Unmade existed before me or came into being alongside me, like two flames lit from the same spark. What I do know is that it grew as we grew, as if we were sustenance to it, or a mirror in which it could first recognize itself. It didn't want to rule, and I want to repeat that, because it runs so counter to every story your cultures have told about evil. It didn't want to be king over a burned earth. It wanted no one left, in the end, who could remember an earth had ever existed to burn. The complete erasure of memory itself, not merely of life. When the second of the first ones woke, I'll give her a name later, she's earned one, but not yet. We're proceeding chronologically, as much as I'm able. I felt, for the first time, something that wasn't loneliness. It wasn't joy either, not entirely. It was closer to the realization that loneliness need not be permanent, that it could be a phase you grow out of if you wait long enough. I've forgotten that lesson many times since and learned it again just as many. Maybe you're learning it yourself right now. I can't know. I can only guess. We became 2, then 3, then more, over a span of time that felt to me like a vessel filling drop by drop, each drop costing millions of years. And with each of us, the Unmade grew too, more slowly than we did, but steadily, as though it drew strength from our mere existence, the way a shadow lengthens as the sun climbs, not because the sun creates the shadow, but because it finally gives the shadow room to show itself. I want to confess something now that I've confessed to no one, not even to those closest to me among my own kind. I'm no longer certain whether the story I just told you actually happened this way, or whether it's the version I've told myself across countless ages, until it started to feel like memory. I possess an ability I'll tell you more about soon. I can see into the thoughts.